My name is Maris Elodie Hart, 27 years old. The day the calls started, my apartment sounded like a haunted thing. Just the refrigerator humming and the phone vibrating itself across the counter until it almost leapt into the sink. 12 missed calls from numbers I used to know by muscle memory. 12 from people who blocked me 3 years ago for being too dramatic, for saying the quiet part out loud at Thanksgiving, for refusing to take back the word racist, just because the uncle who said it liked to carve the turkey. I watched the voicemail icons stack like bruises. The first few tried sweetness. Hey, just checking in. It's been too long. Like we'd fallen out over a board game. Then the voices shifted. We need to talk about Grandma's estate. Polite urgency with a cash register ringing under the syllables. By the end, they'd dropped the frosting entirely. You need to call us back immediately. As if I worked for them. As if I hadn't learned the hard way that my voice only mattered when it echoed theirs. 2 weeks ago, I found out my grandmother died from an obituary link someone sent me without a note. No call. No, she was sick. No address for flowers. I sat on my bathroom floor and cried into a towel that smelled like laundry soap because grief feels cleaner when you can wring it out. She was the only person in that family who loved me without making it a trade. She used to slip me $20 bills and whisper, "Don't let them make you small." The last time we snuck lunch, 6 months back, a booth by a window where the light forgave faces, she held my hand and said, "When I die, you show up. Hear me? You show up." So when the lawyer's email pinged, mandatory reading for all beneficiaries, I asked my charge nurse to cover the last hour of my shift, washed my hands until the sanitizer stung, and went straight to the law office in scrubs. I wasn't going to dress my way into belonging. I wasn't going to pretend for people who had trained themselves not to see me. They saw me anyway, not as a person, more like an omen. My mother's face paled in a way I'd only seen once before, when her favorite anchor got fired for misconduct and she called it a smear. My aunt gasped into her scarf. One cousin narrowed her eyes like she'd found the stain she came to clean. "You have some nerve," my uncle said. Not the one I confronted at the funeral when I was 16. Not the one who blocked me with a sermon about respect. Another one. There are always more uncles. The lawyer cleared his throat into the center of the room like a referee with tired lungs. "Let's begin." At first, the will sounded like practical math. Small bequest to distant relatives, the modest house divided between my mother and her siblings. I watched my mom's mouth settle into that satisfied neutral she wears to church, what she calls ladylike, and what I call choosing quiet over truth. The lawyer adjusted his glasses, a tiny ritual that made the oxygen warp. "And to my granddaughter," he read, "Maris," he looked up to make sure the name landed, "I leave the entirety of my investment portfolio, currently valued at $2.3 million, and the contents of safety deposit box 847. Silence didn't fall so much as it tore. Then everything happened at once. My mother stood so fast her chair scraped a sound that made the glass water pitcher shimmy. "That money was supposed to be for all of us," she said, teeth too close together. "She's been poisoning Mom against the family for years." My uncle threatened legal action and produced a phrase he must have practiced, undue influence, like the law was a coat he could shrug into. A cousin started listing my faults at a speed that would have impressed my charge nurse on a code blue. I felt nothing and everything. The room blurred at the edges like a cheap lens. Somewhere in the din, paper slid across wood. The lawyer leaned toward me with an envelope. "Per your grandmother's explicit instructions, this is for you privately," he said, voice pitched for my ears and no one else's. I slipped out with the envelope pinched between two fingers, the way you carry a delicate thing you can't afford to drop. The bathroom mirror did me no favors. Tired eyes, scrub top creased, mascara surrendering to the day. I cracked the seal. Inside, a small brass key taped to a note in her handwriting, the loopy cursive that made grocery lists look like invitations. "Baby girl," it began, the two words that always rewired my spine. "They're going to fight this. They're going to say terrible things. What's in the deposit box will show you exactly who they are and what they've done. The money is yours. But the box, that's your choice whether to use it. I love you. Make them pay or let it go. Either way, you're free now. P.S. Check the deed to the lake house. Surprise." I stood in that small room while the air conditioner rattled like it had opinions. I thought of all the times Grandma had watched me scanning a room for exits and told me I didn't have to live like everything was an emergency. Then she left me a key. When I came back, my mother's voice was red. "We'll be contesting on grounds of competency," she told the lawyer, each syllable a thin blade. Everyone knows she was slipping. She was sharp enough to remember who showed up, I said, and surprised myself by not shaking. Sharp enough to hide cameras in the only house you didn't think to search. It wasn't a bluff. I didn't know about the cameras yet. I only knew the way Grandma's eyes could cut a room down to size. But the words landed. My aunt went still. My uncle stopped mid-threat like someone had unplugged him. The lawyer cleared his throat a second time. "We're done for today," he said, already standing. "If you wish to contest, contact my office. But be advised, Mrs. Stella Hart was assessed as fully competent within the last 3 years. Twice." Outside, the sky had the color Atlanta uses when it wants to argue with heat. I walked to my car in slow motion, aware of the way adrenaline makes keys clumsy. The envelope crinkled in my pocket like a small, steady heartbeat. I didn't go home. I drove straight to the bank listed on the note, turned off my phone so the voicemails could pile up in peace, and asked to access safety deposit box 847. They took me to a private viewing room with a table that felt too polished for what it was about to carry. The banker slid the long, heavy box onto the surface and left me to it, closing the door soft as a secret. I sat. I pressed my thumbs to the small brass key until the teeth bit my skin. Then I turned it. Inside were folders. Dozens. Each labeled with a single, familiar name. The first tab stared back at me like a dare. I took a breath, long, slow, the kind nurses use when the room is louder than the chart, and reached for the one on top. The first tab was my uncle's, thick, heavy. The man translated into paper. I opened it and the room changed temperature. Bank statements with neat red circles, photocopies of checks where Grandma's signature had been forged so precisely it felt like a love letter to crime. A memo from a forensic accountant with language that didn't blink. Embezzlement, disbursements inconsistent with care needs, personal use. Tucked into a plastic sleeve, photos of him at a hotel bar with his secretary, time-stamped for nights his wife had been in chemo. My mouth tasted metallic, like the after of biting your tongue. I set it aside and reached for my mother's folder. It came with glitter, pawn shop invoices printed on glossy paper, high-res snapshots of jewelry nestled in velvet, captioned with dates that lined up with holidays. The Cartier bracelet from 2019, emerald earrings in 2020, a diamond tennis bracelet in 2021. Receipts bearing her signature, side by side with a statement from Rita, the housekeeper they'd fired and called a thief. There were also typed notes of conversations my mother had with Grandma's doctor. "She's been confused, don't you think?" Sometimes she forgets. We're worried, planting rumors like bulbs, counting on them to bloom in winter. Another folder was labeled with my aunt's name in Grandma's tidy hand. Inside, emails about seeding a narrative, copies of Facebook messages to cousins about concerns over Stella's memory, a printed itinerary for a girls' spa day charged to Grandma's card 2 weeks after she'd been admitted with pneumonia. I stared at the heap and felt the old nausea, the kind that comes when the thing you suspected stands up and says hello. I took the folder with my own name next, heart thudding in my neck. Inside were every letter, every email I'd ever sent Grandma, the ones I wrote from dorm rooms and break rooms, and the passenger seat when I was too tired to go inside after a shift. Birthday cards with crooked hearts, a photo of the two of us at the lake, my hair huge from humidity, her hand wrapped around mine like a tether. Under those, documents I didn't know existed. A terse incident log from the funeral director's office. Minor reports being cornered in back hallway by adult male relative. Staff intervention noted. Family declined to file police report. 2 witness statements from staff, printed and signed. A list of dates when I'd called my mother and she hadn't answered. A printout of the voicemail I left afterward. "Please call me back. I need you." My throat burned. At the bottom lay a slim flash drive in a clear case, a label in Grandma's handwriting. Insurance. The word looked strange dressed like that. I slid the drive into my laptop and waited while the directory bloomed with folders, Dining room cam, study cam, entryway cam, each dated. I clicked a file from 5 years ago. The frame opened on the dining room, a familiar chandelier throwing warm light over faces that didn't look kind in stillness. The camera must have been tucked into one of the faux candle sockets, high, unblinking. My uncle leaned toward my mother, his voice a hiss, softened by distance. When the old bat finally dies, we split everything 3 ways and cut Maris out completely. She's too mouthy, always has been. My mother nodded, chin sharp. I'll make sure there's no paper trail leading to her. We'll say she abandoned Mom years ago. Someone else lifted a glass. To family loyalty. I clicked another. 3 years ago, my aunt stage whispering to a cousin in the study. We contest any will that includes her. We'll say she manipulated. Dementia, early stages. It won't be hard. Perfect, the cousin said. I'll start telling people she's been forgetting things. They both smiled, like they'd solved crosswords. I wasn't breathing right. I clicked a third file and wished I hadn't. The day after Thanksgiving, the one where I said racist and the table went colder than ice water. They'd gathered without me at Grandma's house, faces close, hands moving as if they could choreograph truth. My mother stood. I think it's time we agree that Maris is no longer part of this family. She's disrespectful, dramatic, and honestly, she paused for effect. I think she might have mental problems. Heads nodded, glasses lifted. To family loyalty, my aunt said again, and this time the laughter came with a clink that sounded like a lock. I scrolled to the last folder, dated 3 weeks before Grandma died. She sat in her bedroom in a chair I knew better than my own, hair brushed back, eyes bright with the kind of clarity people mistake for cruelty when it belongs to a woman. She leaned toward the lens until she filled the frame. Maris, baby girl, if you're watching this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry I can't be there to swat the hands away. A small smile. I've been watching them for years, not because I needed proof they were who they are, Lord knows I knew, but because I knew they'd try to take you down to keep their story tidy. She lifted a manila envelope into frame and tapped it. Everything you've seen is legal. I installed the cameras. I hired the investigators. I paid the accountant. Chain of custody's tighter than a drum. If you need to use it, use it. If you don't, take your inheritance and walk away and never look back. Either way, you are free. Her voice softened. They've been preaching family loyalty while planning to erase you. I want you to inherit something different. Love, choices, a life that belongs to you. Oh, and check the deed to the lake house, little fish. Her eyes glinted. Surprise. She blew a kiss she would have claimed she didn't know how to blow, then reached forward and the screen went black. I put my forehead on my folded arms and stayed there until the air in the room smelled like paper and my own skin. Then I did what nurses do in code. I made a plan. Triplicate backups. 1 to an encrypted drive I kept in my bag. 1 to a cloud account with an ugly name. 1 to a brand new USB I labeled burial recipes because no one in my family cooks. I sorted files by name, by crime, by date. I wrote a list of harmed people and next steps. Rita, call her first. Bank, record subpoenas already in play. PI, confirm affidavits. Accountant, timeline. Then I turned my phone back on and listened to it choke on voicemails. Threats dressed as concern. Offers dressed as love. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I emailed the attorney and asked for a mandatory all-hands meeting under his letterhead. Agenda, probate formalities. Attendance required to avoid immediate litigation. Tomorrow, I wrote, please schedule the largest conference room you have. He replied 2 minutes later, confirmed, 10 a.m., they will attend. I closed the laptop and slid the flash drive back into its sleeve. The box on the table looked smaller now, like a trick candle that had finally burned down to its wick. I stood, pressing my palms flat until the shake in them went someplace else, and asked the banker to witness me relocking everything I wasn't carrying. When the heavy drawer clicked shut, it sounded like a door closing on a house I'd already moved out of. On the way to the elevator, I passed a mirror and caught my own eyes looking like someone I almost trusted. I didn't smile. I nodded, like you do, at a colleague who knows what to do next. Tomorrow, they'd try to make me small in a room with good air conditioning and bad memories. Tomorrow, I'd bring gravity. The conference room smelled like old money and fresh fear. Mahogany table, crystal water glasses, leather chairs that sighed when you sat down. My family had claimed every seat except one, the one at the head. I walked in 15 minutes late on purpose, a small rebellion dressed as professionalism. My heels clicked against the tile like punctuation. My uncle was the first to speak. "We were just saying," he began, voice syrupy and false, "that Grandma wasn't in her right mind. You can't expect anyone to take that will seriously." "I can," I said, setting my leather portfolio on the table, "and so can the court." Mom's jaw tightened. "Don't do this, Maris. You're confused. We all know Stella's memory was fading. This nonsense," she gestured vaguely, "isn't what she wanted." "Funny," I said, "because she seemed perfectly lucid when she recorded every single one of you plotting to erase me." That shut the room down. The attorney cleared his throat but didn't interrupt. He knew this wasn't his show anymore. I pulled a flash drive from my folder and slid it toward him. Play file number 5. The screen behind him flickered to life. The sound of clinking glasses filled the room, my uncle's voice crisp and confident. "When the old bat finally dies, we split everything 3 ways and cut Maris out completely." Then Mom's reply, "I'll make sure there's no paper trail." For a moment, no one moved. My aunt tried to laugh. "You can't prove that's real." I met her eyes. Every video, every statement, every document, legally obtained, chain of custody intact. The cameras were Grandma's. The investigators were licensed. The evidence is admissible. But please, I added, smiling slightly, keep talking. The prosecutor will love it. Mom's chair screeched as she stood. "You're threatening us?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm clarifying." I opened my portfolio. "Let's start with you, Mom. The Cartier bracelet you sold at King's Jewelers, July 2019. The emerald earrings, August 2020. The diamond tennis bracelet, March 2021. I have receipts, photos, and testimony from Rita, the woman you blamed and got fired." She froze. The color drained from her face. I turned to my uncle. "And you, $47,000 siphoned from Grandma's accounts over 2 years. Checks forged in her name, verified by a handwriting analyst. Plus a few vacation receipts charged to those same accounts. Oh, and the affair with your secretary while your wife was in chemo. I have photos." He went purple. "You can't—" "I can," I said softly, "and I will if you make me." The attorney looked uneasy. "Ms. Hart, perhaps—" "No, let her talk," my aunt snapped, glaring at me. "Gladly." I turned to her. "You spent the last 2 years telling anyone who'd listen that Grandma was losing her memory. You convinced her doctor to prescribe unnecessary medication so she'd look disoriented during visits. I have emails, prescriptions, and the doctor's statement admitting you pressured him." She inhaled sharply, eyes flicking to the lawyer. The room erupted, everyone talking at once, arguing, denying, pointing fingers. I let them rage for exactly 60 seconds. Then I tapped my phone, and the recording of their Thanksgiving loyalty toast played through the speaker. Their own voices filled the room. To family loyalty, laughter, ice in glasses. My mother's voice saying, "Maris is dramatic. She has mental problems." Silence slammed back down like a lid. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, sliding a stack of documents across the table. "Each of you will sign acknowledging the validity of Grandma's will. You will agree not to contest it, directly or indirectly, in any court or through any proxy. You will forfeit any claim to her accounts, portfolio, or property. In return, I will not submit this evidence to law enforcement, the IRS, or your employers." My uncle scoffed. "You're bluffing." I met his gaze. "Try me. You have 48 hours. After that, everything goes public. Embezzlement, fraud, perjury, theft, tax evasion, the affair, all of it. Every file, every video, every face." My mother's lip trembled. "Maris, please, we're family." "That word doesn't mean what you think it does," I said quietly. "Family isn't people who share your blood. It's people who don't make you bleed for loving them." The lawyer swallowed hard. "If they sign?" "Then I walk away," I said. "I don't want their money. I just want my peace." He nodded slowly. "I'll prepare the paperwork." I stood gathering my things. 48 hours, I repeated, and headed for the door. "Maris," Mom called after me, voice shaking. "Grandma was sick. She didn't know what she was doing." I paused, hand on the handle. "She knew exactly what she was doing," I said. "She knew you'd try this. She recorded everything because she loved me enough to protect me from you." When I walked out, I didn't look back. 2 days later, every single document was signed. No contest, no objections, not even a lawyer's whisper. But I wasn't done, because Grandma's letter had one last line I couldn't stop rereading. P.S. Check the deed to the lake house. Surprise. That night, I pulled out the file from the bank's envelope. There it was. An official notarized transfer dated 3 years ago. The lake house, the only place that had ever felt like safety, was already mine. The property my mother and her siblings had planned to sell wasn't even the same one. They'd been arguing over a rundown cabin 2 hours away, never realizing Grandma had switched the deeds. I sat at my kitchen table under a single bulb and laughed until I cried. Grandma had outsmarted them all before she even died. The next morning, I packed a duffel bag, grabbed the lake house key, and drove toward the only place that had ever felt like home. As I turned off the highway and onto the gravel road lined with pines, the sun broke through the clouds, scattering gold across the water. The house stood exactly as I remembered: white shutters, chipped paint, porch swing swaying in the wind. On the kitchen counter sat an envelope with my name in Grandma's looping handwriting. I tore it open with shaking hands. Maris, if you're reading this, you found my little secret. The lake house is yours, the way it always should have been. I've been transferring assets to your name for years, so they wouldn't notice. The portfolio, the house, your student loans, all settled. There's also an automatic payment for your rent for the next 5 years. I wanted to make sure you'd be safe while you figured out what you really want. The money is yours. The freedom is yours. Do something beautiful with it. Make yourself happy. And remember, the best revenge isn't destroying them. It's living so well they can't touch you. I sank onto the old couch and let the letter rest in my lap. Outside, the lake rippled like it was exhaling. I whispered, "I will, Grandma, I promise." But I also knew myself. And I knew the story wasn't over. Because people like my family never let go of what they think they deserve. I stayed up that first night at the lake house listening to the wind drag across the water and the porch boards groan like an old friend shifting in her sleep. The place still smelled like lemon polish and faint tobacco, just like Grandma. Every corner held her touch. The chipped teacup by the sink, the crossword book open on the table, the blanket folded too neatly to be an accident. I should have felt safe. But peace has muscle memory. Mine still flinched at quiet. The next morning, I brewed coffee in the same cracked percolator we'd used during summers here. I sat on the porch swing with her letter folded in my lap. The sunlight caught on the lake, turning it into moving glass. For a moment, I let myself believe her final line: "You're free now." Then my phone buzzed. "Mom, we need to talk about the house." "Mom, this is a misunderstanding. Call me." "Mom, I'm driving up there." I turned the phone face down. I wasn't ready. But my mother didn't believe in permission. She arrived at 8 the next morning, tires crunching gravel like teeth. Her designer sunglasses couldn't hide the fury vibrating under her skin. She didn't even knock, just started pounding on the door. "Maris, you need to give it back." I opened it halfway. "Good morning to you, too." "This is our family property," she spat. "You manipulated her into signing it over." "The transfer happened 3 years ago," I said calmly. "It's recorded with the county. 2 doctors evaluated her competency at the time. It's airtight." Her voice cracked. "We'll sue you." "Go ahead," I said, leaning against the frame. "But make sure your lawyer's ready for the evidence Grandma collected. It's all legally obtained. I'll enjoy watching discovery ruin your reputation." She stared at me, chest rising and falling. "You ungrateful brat. After everything we did for you." I laughed softly. "Everything you did to me, you mean?" That hit. Her mouth opened, then closed. For once, she had no script. "Leave," I said quietly. She hesitated, tears starting now, and for a flicker, I saw the woman she used to be. The one who brushed my hair when I had nightmares. But that woman had chosen silence over truth too many times. She stormed off, but not before dragging her car keys across 2 of my tires. The hiss of escaping air was almost comical. By noon, I had installed new security cameras, one facing the driveway, another by the porch. Grandma had taught me well. That evening, as dusk soaked the water in gold, the phone rang again. This time, my uncle. "I just want to talk," he said smoothly. "Face to face. We're family, after all." I knew that tone, the snake-charming one he used when cornered. "Coffee shop in town," I said. "Tomorrow morning. Public place." He smiled through the line. Perfect. The next day, I wore jeans, a plain jacket, and a recording device clipped beneath the seam. Grandma called it insurance. Now I understood why. He was already waiting at the cafe, wearing a polo that said casual, but with cologne that said performance. I know we've had differences, he began, smiling like a man who practiced in the mirror. But Grandma's gone, and dragging this through court helps no one. What do you want, Maris? Money? An apology? I have both already, I said. He blinked, the smile cracking. Listen, the evidence you have, the photos, if they got out, it could complicate things with my wife's estate. She left me everything, but if proof of an affair during her illness surfaces, her kids could contest. So I propose an arrangement. You keep those files sealed, and I'll make sure everyone else backs off. And in return, my silence, my cooperation, and we never see each other again. I sipped my coffee, slow. Counteroffer, I said. You sign a confession detailing everything you did, the embezzlement, the forged checks, the affair, and I keep it sealed as long as no one in this family harasses me again. If any of you contact me, contest the will, or show up uninvited, I release everything. To law enforcement, the press, and your late wife's lawyer. He went pale. That's blackmail. No, I said, setting down my cup. That's insurance. The same thing Grandma called it. He tried to glare, but ended up studying the tablecloth. You really are her granddaughter. Thank you, I said. I'll draft the statement, have it notarized. He signed the next day. Over the next week, I met with each of them. My aunt, shaking, confessed to the forged prescriptions. My cousins admitted to spreading lies about dementia. My mother refused at first, then folded when I mentioned Rita's name and the pawn shop receipts. Each one signed. Each one left knowing their futures lived in a locked drawer at the lake house. After that, the phone stopped ringing. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was stunned, like the air after an explosion. But eventually, the quiet began to change texture. Less hollow, more alive. I started walking the perimeter of the lake every morning, collecting wildflowers, repainting shutters, fixing the swing that groaned like a ghost. One day I opened Grandma's old recipe box and found a folded slip of paper taped under the lid. The house needs laughter again. Find it, little fish. I stared at those words for a long time. That's when the idea took root. It started small, a thought, a whisper, a way to turn pain into something that didn't rot me from the inside out. What if this place, the one that held all our ghosts, could become a refuge instead of a reminder? What if I rebuilt it not as a hiding place, but as a sanctuary? For people like me. For people who'd been told family meant pain. I looked around the empty rooms, sunlight streaming through the windows like grace, and I said it out loud. Let's make something beautiful, Grandma. And for the first time, the silence sounded like agreement. It began with one email. A simple post online, anonymous, quiet. If you've ever felt unsafe with your family, there's a place by the water. A few rooms, no cost. Just peace. I didn't expect anyone to respond. I just needed to say it out loud to the world. This house could be more than a monument to what had been taken. 2 days later, the first message came. A woman named Rita. I stared at the name for a long time, almost not believing it. The same Rita my mother had fired and framed. Her email was short, careful. I saw your post. I don't know if this is you, Maris, but if it is, I'd love to visit. I haven't had a good night's sleep in years. When she arrived, she stood at the door like someone who'd learned to expect disappointment. I told her, "You don't need to knock here." She laughed, a small, rusty sound, and crossed the threshold. The first night, she barely spoke. By the third, she was sitting on the porch swing with a cup of tea, telling me stories about Grandma, how Stella used to hum old gospel songs while polishing the banisters, how she'd slip Rita extra pie slices and whisper, "Don't tell those fools in the kitchen." When Rita left a week later, she cried. "I forgot what safety feels like," she said. That sentence cracked something open in me. Within a month, more women came. Friends of friends, people who'd seen the post, women who'd been erased, silenced, or betrayed by people who shared their last names. Some stayed a weekend, some longer. I cooked for them, sat with them on the dock while they learned how to breathe again. I called the place the Stella House after Grandma. Then I called a lawyer and turned it into something real, a foundation, a refuge. I withdrew a small part of the investment portfolio and hired a trauma therapist twice a month. Rita came back as the first employee. House manager, she insisted, proud to have a title again. I bought thrifted furniture, painted the walls sunrise yellow, planted lavender along the walkway because Grandma once said it keeps away bad spirits and mosquitoes in equal measure. When the local paper wrote about us, a grassroots healing retreat for women from difficult families, Donations started coming in, enough to expand, enough to dream bigger. We added weekend workshops on boundaries and financial independence, art therapy, yoga by the lake, legal consultations for women leaving abusive homes. Within a year, there was a waiting list. I used to think revenge would taste like victory. Turns out it tastes like coffee on the porch at dawn while someone laughs in the kitchen for the first time in years. Rita came to me one afternoon, wiping her hands on her apron. "You know," she said, "your grandmother always told me you'd do something beautiful one day." I didn't believe her. Thought she was just bragging. Guess I was wrong. I smiled. She was never wrong about much. A few months later, we hosted our first anniversary gathering. 40 women came back, bringing food, flowers, and stories. Some had reunited with siblings. Others had built chosen families. We stood on the dock, watching the sunset burn itself into the water. Someone started clapping. Then everyone did. The next morning, an envelope waited in my mailbox. No return address. Inside was a clipping from a business magazine, an article about the Stella Foundation, calling it a model for trauma-informed healing. At the bottom, scrawled in familiar handwriting, was one line, "Proud of you, even from wherever I am. Love, S." I didn't cry. Not right then. I just held it to my chest until the ink smudged. Months turned into years. The foundation grew. 3 houses, then 5, then 10. I gave up my nursing job, went back to school for a master's in social work. The same drive that once kept me running from my family now pushed me toward building something bigger than them. We opened a legal fund for women escaping toxic inheritance battles, a scholarship program for daughters of single mothers, a therapy sponsorship for survivors of family violence. Every new idea felt like a conversation with Grandma. And then came the article. A glossy magazine ran a feature titled "The Heir Who Chose Healing." My story, our story, sprawled across 6 pages. The toxic family, the inheritance, the evidence, the transformation. I hadn't wanted to talk about the money, but the reporter insisted the contrast mattered. "You took blood money and turned it into lifeblood for others," she said. 3 days after it published, my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello?" The voice was thinner than I remembered. "I read the article," my mother said. I froze. "It was good. What you're doing. I didn't know." "You didn't ask," I said quietly. "I wanted to tell you," she stopped, voice catching, "that I'm sorry." I let the silence stretch. "I don't need your apology," I said finally. "I needed your protection when I was 16. I needed you to believe me. You chose your comfort instead." "I was wrong," she whispered. "Can you ever forgive me?" "Maybe," I said, "but not for you, for me, and not today." She started to cry. "What can I do?" "Live with it," I said gently, "and don't pass it down." When the call ended, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt lighter. That night, I sat on the porch with Rita, watching fireflies blink across the lake. "Do you think people really change?" I asked. Rita smiled. "Not always, but sometimes they grow quiet enough to listen." I looked out at the water, the reflection of the moon trembling like something trying to stay whole. "Grandma was right," I said. "The best revenge isn't destroying them. It's living so well they can't touch you." Rita nodded. "And you, baby, are living beautifully." The swing creaked softly between us. Somewhere deep in the trees, a nightbird called, its echo carrying across the lake like a prayer finally answered. 5 years later, the lake house didn't feel like a refuge anymore. It felt like a beginning. The Stella Foundation had grown beyond what I ever imagined. 12 houses now, each one with a story rooted in survival. We'd helped over 10,000 women find freedom from families that weaponized love. We'd partnered with law schools, trauma therapists, and advocacy centers across 6 states. But I still kept Grandma's porch swing exactly as it was. Same chipped paint, same chain that squeaked on windy days. The sound had become its own kind of music. We held an anniversary event every summer, a celebration of rebirth. Women brought their kids, their new partners, their quiet peace. The dock became a dance floor of bare feet and laughter. Rita always made too much food. At last year's gathering, I gave a speech. "We're all proof that legacy isn't what's left behind," I said. "It's what you build from what tried to break you." They stood, applauded, cried, the kind of applause that feels like prayer. And then, one morning not long after, a package arrived on my doorstep. No return address. The handwriting was elegant, old-fashioned. My heart stuttered before I even opened it. Inside was a single USB drive and a note written in faded blue ink. Ms. Hart, your grandmother asked me to deliver this exactly 10 years after her passing. She said you'd know why. Philip Chen, attorney at law. My hands shook as I plugged the drive into my laptop. One video file. When the image appeared, I stopped breathing. Grandma sat in her bedroom, sunlight spilling across her face like a crown. She looked strong, alive in a way I hadn't seen since before the sickness. Maris, she said, her smile both mischief and love. If you're watching this, it's been 10 years. You've probably turned everything upside down by now. She laughed softly. Good. She leaned forward, eyes fierce. I know what you did. I've seen what you built. Philip's kept me updated every year, and I want you to understand something important. She paused, letting the words gather weight. I never cared about the money, or the house, or who got what. I cared about legacy. They thought inheritance was wealth and property. But real inheritance, my girl, is values. It's courage. It's the choice to stop the cycle instead of surviving inside it. Her voice softened. They inherited their cruelty. You inherited love, and you made something beautiful out of it. That's the only kind of inheritance that lasts. She chuckled. I bet you kept the porch swing. Don't ever paint over those scratches. They're proof it's lived a good life, like us. Then her face grew tender. I'm proud of you, Maris. You broke the chain. You didn't just survive. You redefined what family means. That's my legacy, and now it's yours. She smiled, eyes shining. Live beautifully, little fish. That's the only revenge that matters. The video ended. I sat there for a long time, tears slipping down my face in quiet disbelief. I whispered, I did, Grandma. I really did. Outside, the lake shimmered under the morning sun, the water calm and endless. Later that evening, I walked down to the new oak tree we'd planted 2 summers ago, the Stella tree. Hanging from one of its branches was a small bronze plaque engraved with her name, Stella Hart. She taught us that love is action, not blood. Next to me stood Isabel, my wife, my partner, the woman whose kindness had become home. We'd met years earlier at a fundraiser, her eyes warm, her laugh disarming. The day she proposed, she said, You took pain and turned it into a place where people heal. How could I not want to build a life with you? Now she slipped her hand into mine. You okay? I nodded, smiling through tears. Yeah, she'd have liked you. She already does, Isabel said. Behind us, women from every Stella house stood together. Survivors, staff, children playing tag around their legs. A living mosaic of what Grandma's courage had created. I took the microphone for one last address that night, my voice steady over the hush. 10 years ago, I thought freedom meant walking away. Now I know it means building something worth staying for. I glanced at the photo hanging above the porch. Grandma and me laughing on that swing, sunlight cutting through the trees behind us. She didn't leave me money, I continued. She left me a map, to peace, to purpose, to people like all of you. That's what inheritance really is, the love you pass forward. The crowd stood in silence, some crying, some smiling. And then, as the sun dipped below the lake, someone began clapping. One by one, every woman joined in, their applause rolling across the water until it sounded like thunder and rain all at once. After everyone left, I sat alone on the swing, the night quiet except for the crickets and the gentle lap of waves. I thought about Grandma's last words, live beautifully. I looked at the stars reflected in the water, at the home I'd built from ashes, at the legacy that had become a lighthouse for others. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel haunted by my family's cruelty. I felt untouchable, whole, free. I whispered into the dark, We did it, Grandma. We really did. The wind off the lake stirred, gentle and warm, brushing against my cheek like an answer.